Kerry Boulton is Australia's most respected exit strategy advisor and CEO of the Exit Strategy Group. Welcome to this week's segment.
So as I mentioned, I recently was down at the Traffic and Conversion Summit here in Sydney, and I met some pretty amazing people, and one of those people was Kerry Boulton. So I'm pretty happy to have Kerry on the podcast. Welcome to the Business Brain Food Podcast, Kerry.
Thanks very much, Ben. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, all my guests get asked this same question when we first kick off an interview, and that's for you to tell us something a little bit quirky about yourself.
It's time for something quirky. And now, something quirky.
So something quirky, Kerry. What have you got?
Yeah. It's something that people often raise their eyebrows at when I let them know that I'm still really actively involved in our local junior sports club. Since my kids are now 24 and 28, it's been quite a while since they've been playing junior sport.
Oh, wow.
But I just love it. I love being involved with the kids, the little ones, and I still look after all the Milo cricket and now the T20 blast that's come along. I just love being involved with the kids. I think it keeps you young.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, good on you. And do your kids ever go back there and help out with a bit of coaching or anything, or they just have nothing to do with it?
Look, they do, yes.
Yeah.
Actually, they do. My son does do that sort of thing. And in fact, he's the line marker for the footy these days. So during the winter season, he's out there every week marking the lines on the footy grounds for them, for the kids all to play football. And he's very much a cricketer, so he loves getting involved with the kids too. And my daughter, she's been one who's been along always to help out doing canteen and those sorts of things as well. So yeah. Very much a family affair. Yeah.
Well, that's very cool. Very cool. Good on you for doing that. And we met down at the Traffic and Conversion Summit here in Sydney. That was a pretty amazing few days, wasn't it?
Oh, mind explosion, and just incredible to be able to have the opportunity to keep up with everything that's going on out there in the virtual world. It really is exciting.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Now, we're here to have a chat about exit strategies. I know that you are the founder of the Exit Strategy Group and the CEO, and I wanted to find out a little bit more about how or why businesses might think about their exit strategy, because a lot of business owners don't, do they?
They sure don't, Ben. And, it's one of those things that I've focused on just by doing a little bit of homework over the last couple of years. It might be easier if I go back a few years when I had the opportunity, first of all, to get into business for myself, which was way back in 1987 when I did a management buyout, in fact, of a division of May Nicholas Limited. I happened to be the general manager at the time, and I'm going to boast about the first general manager in May Nicholas way back when. But the opportunity came along at the time when, as often large corporates do, they look strategically ahead and said, what do we want to do? Where do we want to go as far as the business is concerned? And they decided to get out of a number of the activities that they had at the time, one of which was the business that I was looking after, which was called Freight Management International. And this was a international freight forwarding business, 5 offices around Australia, 120 overseas agents, 80-odd staff. So I actually said to my operations director at the time that I was interested in buying the business. They tried to sell it to an international group. That didn't happen, and they came back to me. I was very fortunate. I had a great mentor. I went to him and he said, Kerry, you write the business plan. If you can convince me, I'll help you get the money together, because I had nothing, absolutely nothing at the time. Now, the reason for telling you the story really is that I learned from a book back then how to write a business plan to raise money. And the most important thing that was in that book was I needed to have an exit strategy. I needed to be able to show any potential investors how they could realise their investment over a period of time and what I had in mind. So all these years on, I wrote the plan. That's history now. I got the investors on board, grew the business and sold it off 9 years later, which was actually part of the original plans. Obviously, with business plans, everything else is by the by, it goes up and down like a yo-yo. Beginning and end worked out for me, which was fantastic. But the thing that I really remember was having to have that exit strategy to think about the end, begin with the end in mind. And that's a phrase, of course, that we've heard, I'm sure many people have heard Stephen Covey talk about in his 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And applying it to a business is really, really important. The thing that I looked at over the last couple of years, and my husband and I have had a couple of other businesses as well, which we've been involved with and grew and sold, and one that we've just started 4 years ago, which is growing nicely again. So I looked at what's the situation in the marketplace today, taking a bit of a leaf out of the books from May Nicholas, and that is that our baby boomer generation, of course, is getting older. There's a lot of talk currently about baby boomers, and statistically there's 1.4 million baby boomer business owners who will be over the age of 55 by 2024. Now that is incredible. What that really means is that somewhere down the track, those baby boomers are going to be getting out of their businesses, because 2 things in life are certain, as we've all heard: death and taxes. Yeah. So one way or the other, you're able to choose when, you're able to choose how, but you're not able to choose if you're going to leave your business, because you will, one way or the other. So I think one of the really important and accelerating issues for business owners is to actually think about their exit. Whether that means selling, whether that means succession, whether that means liquidating assets. I mean, there's a whole raft, and as many different ways to exit your business as there are businesses. But it's a really important issue, and most people don't want to face it. It's a bit like the elephant in the room. Yeah,
no doubt. Now, I've got to ask, because I worked at May Nicholas many years ago. In fact, I was at the division I worked for was called Dispatch Machine. Do you remember them in Sky Road?
Right, I remember Sky Road. I remember Sky Road. Yes.
But I wasn't in management though. I was a radio operator, only for a very short time, because I had some senior manager come in and, as they do in these corporate companies, make changes and tell me I had to go. So I wasn't there long.
No, that's what they do, don't they?
Yeah, they
exactly.
Do. They do. Now, it's interesting, you've talked about a business plan as well, which is something that also a lot of business owners don't have. But how many business owners do you think go into business thinking about, how am I going to get out of this business?
I think you probably count them on one hand, really, unless you're in a position, as I was, where you're going out and looking for money, investors in particular. It's not even going to be on your radar. If you need to raise money and you're going to a bank, the last thing that they're asking you about is, well, how are you going to get out of this business? All they want to know is what security you have, to put up in terms of bricks and mortar to secure any sort of finance, basically. But yeah, very few people would give it any thought.
And why do you think? Yeah, why do you think that is? Why do you think people start a business and not thinking about that end? You said think about the end in mind. We're not going to live forever, are we? We're probably not even going to be bodied enough forever to be able to run a business. And again, let's be honest, we don't all want to have to work until we die. So, why do you think it is people don't think about it?
I guess, you know what, I think it's just that it's not been in people's awareness more than anything. And none of the universities, business courses, general literature that I see or have seen in the past tends to cover it. It's quite amazing. In fact, one of the interesting exercises was I did a search on Amazon to see what books were available for exit strategies. And you know how many I found? 11. That was it. 11 books.
On Amazon. Now there's a market right there for someone who knows about exit strategies.
Correct. I mean, I've already written one and I've got a second on the way. And yet if you go to look for business growth books, marketing books, every other type of book, there's thousands and thousands and thousands. But on exit strategies, there's none. And I just think it's one of those things that people haven't just hasn't gone into the literature. And up until now, with baby boomers creating such a huge wave, it hasn't probably been a big issue. But now we have a tsunami coming. Last October, there were 41,000 businesses for sale with, on paper, $8 $8 billion. That's the highest number of businesses for sale ever in records in Australia. So it's the tip of the iceberg. And the longer people actually leave it, the more difficult it's going to be for them, because there really literally is a tsunami coming. One way or the other, people are going to be leaving their businesses, and it'll be the old 80-20 rule, 80% of the businesses won't be able to be sold, or they'll be sold for much less than the owner actually wants for the business.
Yeah.
Or more importantly, a lot of business owners think that this is their nest egg for the future. Private business owners over the years have been notoriously bad at putting away money into superannuation. That they've not really taken advantage of that. A lot of the smaller business owners in particular may have struggled, and the thing that they've stopped doing is contributing to super. They do it for their staff. They look after their people, but they haven't looked after themselves. And they think that their business is probably the nest egg for the future. Well, it may not be quite what they're expecting, unfortunately. But it can be. It's not that it can't be. It can be. And it's really about giving yourself time and really working on the business, doing everything that you need to do to increase the value of the business, and to think about it strategically. Who would buy the business? It's not just a case of, okay, I want to retire in 2 years, I'm going to sell the business. Well, you might be able to, but on the other hand, if you think about it strategically and go through a really rigorous process to think about who could buy my business, who makes money when I make money, so who could be a potential buyer, and then you go about making sure that your business is attractive to that potential buyer, and you create your own market. It's the opportunities are there, and you've got to be able to find a way to rise above the crowd.
So I mean, there's a lot of competition when it comes to selling a business, then, isn't there? So
huge.
I know. I spoke to somebody recently who's looking at buying themselves a cafe, and they said, I asked them, I said, "Is there many available?" They're looking in Sydney City, and they said 1 in 3 cafes is on the market. 1 in 3, and that was pretty amazing. When when you look at that, and I said, "Why is 1 in 3 on the market?" And they said, and she said to me, "Some of them just aren't making money. Some are under management, and they just are liquidating. Some are, all these different reasons." But 1 in 3 now. But selling your business is not the only way to exit your business, is it?
No, it's not. I mean, you have a succession plan in place. You might have a family business, and you have someone in the business that is going to be able to take over for you. So, exiting the business is about you. It's about your family. It's about the other stakeholders that might be there, and it's about what you're going to do afterwards. So, certainly, selling is one option. Having a management buyout could be another option. I mean, that's exactly what Ray Nicholas did with me. I was management buying out the business. So having somebody on your team who could be interested in the business for the future and working with them could be a very viable way of orchestrating a gracious exit.
So let's talk about each way. Yeah. So let's talk about each of these different ways for a minute, so people can start to get their heads around them. And the other thing I do want to find out from you is how far in advance they need to start thinking about this. But we'll come to that in a second. What if I'm thinking about the different ways and selling the business, I think that's fairly obvious as to how to go about doing that. I know there's probably a lot of tips that you can give, but selling a business is something that people are familiar with, selling something. But now you're talking about a management buyer. You're probably talking about something that a lot of people aren't familiar with, especially, small to medium business owners. What does that mean, and how does that actually happen?
Okay. Obviously you're selling the business ultimately. That's what's happening. But what it means is that you're facilitating a transition and a sale to somebody inside your business. You could have a key manager in the business, or a couple of people who've been with you, who've been loyal and been there for a while, who are interested in actually taking over from you. So it would be about developing a way that you might actually be providing finance. So they may not necessarily have the financial wherewithal right at this very moment to be able to take you out, in terms of giving you a cash payout right now. But there could be a way that you can orchestrate a gradual buyout of the business while you're still involved with it over a period of time. So what you're really doing is providing a form of vendor finance. So you're actually orchestrating your own exit, and at the same time orchestrating a new owner management in the team.
So from
the team within.
So how would that work? Would they pay you out of their salary until they've paid enough to get a share, or would you give them a share and then you take that out of profits? How does that normally happen?
Well, all of these things are negotiable, obviously, and it'll just depend on the business and the way it is. So it could be that they purchase shares over time from their earnings that they have, whether it's out of their wages or, just depends on the arrangements you actually have set up. There's almost as many ways to orchestrate that as there is ways to, sell a business. So it would very much depend on the individual and their own circumstances and the business itself, and obviously how big the business is, and how long they've been around, and their ability to be able to have some cash, to be able to put into it as well.
Yeah. Now, I mean, we mentioned before there's a lot of businesses for sales, and that number is increasing. So unless you want to get into that market of competition, this is probably a good way to sell, isn't it? It's probably the first thing you should think about if that's your strategy is to sell your business.
Look, absolutely. And then, look, there's another advantage in all of that too, because when you do sell a business to a third party, there's a lot that you have to do to get your business ready to get the maximum value for it, and that is by in terms of being you should have this anyway. If you're running a good business, you should be well systemized. You should have everything in place so that it runs like clockwork. There's a process called due diligence that people have probably heard about. When that happens, then that can be quite disruptive to your business, and usually that involves quite a significant renegotiation, because when people are doing due diligence, what they're doing is looking at ways to decrease what they're paying to you rather than increase it, of course.
It's like with a house, isn't it? I remember
yes, it is.
When my mum was selling their house and they were moving, she was all cut up because everyone was asking for her to take money off of her house, and she was trying to get the top dollar. And then when she went looking for a new house, of course, what did she do?
Yeah, of course.
Looking for the best possible price,
Of course.
It doesn't work both ways, does it? Yeah. So
no, it doesn't. So if you're looking at a management buyout, in fact, you really are not going to go through anything like that sort of due diligence process, because the people know the business. They're in the business already. They know the business. They understand it. So in many ways, it's a very gracious transition, and it doesn't put as much stress on you as the business owner in terms of moving on.
Well, I'm guessing other benefits are you won't spend anywhere near as much time doing a handover or training, will you?
Nothing like it. No, nothing like it at all. As I said, people know the business. They understand it. In fact, they're probably quite anxious to be able to put their own personality into it, and it really can be a very exciting and opportunistic way to be able to get out of the business.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I mean, you've done this. So what you said yourself, you didn't have any money. What was it that you did? You just went and approached them in vendor finance, or how did you go about Freight Management International? Yeah,
no, I at the time had, my husband and I had, zero. So we said, that's why.
As a lot of people do, don't worry.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. I went to my mentor and said, look, here's the opportunity. And as I said, he said, Kerry, you write the business plan. If you can convince me, then I will help you get the money together. So that's what I had to do. I had to actually sit down and write a business plan, which I have to say at the time was quite a struggle, because anybody who has been in a corporate, and I'm sure you can relate to this, Ben, you don't write the sort of business plans that require getting investors. You write corporate business plans, which are very different. So I, as luck would have it, found a book which was called Business Plans That Win Dollars, How to Write Business Plans That Win Dollars. It was a brand new book that was out from MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. It was advertised in the newspaper. I clipped out the coupon. I sent away for the book, and it took a couple of weeks for the book to arrive, because it was all snail mail, 1987. And I wrote my business plan by that book. And it was the best thing I could have done because, as I said, I learned at the time I had to have an exit strategy. So, I just simply I said to my operations director at the time that I was interested in buying the business. So I was a bit gutsy in that respect, but of course I knew they wanted to sell the business. As being the general manager, I knew they wanted to sell that business. But it was gutsy, and I suppose, as far as I was concerned, to say, well, I'm interested, and I would be interested in a management buyout because at the time, having no money, I really didn't know how I was going to do it. But ultimately, it took. It was actually quite fast because it took 4 months for them to figure out that they weren't able to sell the business to the international group that they had in mind, and then they came back to me and said, "Are you still interested?" So, and it actually all happened fairly quickly. By the time in the meantime, when I knew they were going off overseas, I was doing a bit of homework, obviously, so I was able to get that business plan done pretty quickly, get to see my mentor who helped me get the money together through a syndicate. It was actually a syndicate of investors, and I managed to scrounge up a little bit. So I got part shares. My shareholding was really part sweat equity and part cash. We sought vendor finance from May Nicholas as well, and they left money in the business for 18 months, which we were able to pay back. And at the time, interest rates were 15%, 18%.
Wow, yeah, that's right. I remember that. Yeah. That's when my father lost his house.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, interest rates were, they were extraordinary. And of course, we had the stock market crash and all that sort of stuff.
It was insane, yeah.
It really was insane.
So very ballsy at that time, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was actually at the time. And I was also 7 months pregnant with my first child.
Oh, wow. So. You don't do things by halves, do you, Kerry?
Oh, no. I had to sign the contract the day she was born. She decided to come early.
Oh.
She came a month early.
Well, it sounds like it's all worked out, which is good.
It has, yes, it has. It was fine. So, but,
yeah, okay. Yeah. So obviously there's a good story in that, because a lot of people are going, well, okay, if you want to help people buy your business, maybe you can even help them get together a group of people, or you can vendor finance. So here you've got a syndicate of people putting money in, plus you had May Nicholas putting some money in, plus you put a little bit in yourself in the sweat equity. So, you didn't have to have 100% either. So there's always that option to help someone get together a syndicate of people to take your business on, I guess.
Correct, absolutely correct. And I think from personal experience as well, there's something else that's really, really important. And this is flipping it a little bit in terms of when you're in business, buying a business. If you're in there with other partners, it's really important to have a buy-sell agreement and to set that out up front. It's a lot easier to agree terms at the beginning than it is when you're halfway, towards the end or close to the end, when things are slightly different, because as human beings, we always think everything's worth more,
Yes.
So, it's a lot easier to set up those sorts of agreements, as I said, right at the very start, rather than trying to do it at the end.
And it's like Sorry?
Sorry.
What was that, sorry?
No, I was just going to say, look, there's another issue that needs to be addressed here in all of this, and that is that apart from thinking about an exit strategy and giving yourself enough time to actually do what's needed to be able to optimize and maximize the value of your business, it's really important to think about any potential contingency plans that you may want to have in place, because the last thing you want is a fire sale.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you about that, because whilst there's so many businesses on the market, there must be some that just don't sell. What do? They must just be closing down and just calling it quits.
Yes, unfortunately there are. Yeah. There are those who are just they just liquidate. If there are hard assets that they can sell, they'll sell those, and that's a viable option too for some people. They don't really, a lot of people say, no, I'm over it. I don't really want to sell the business per se. I don't want to go through the hassle of all that. I'm just going to liquidate the stock, liquidate get whatever I can for fixtures, fittings, machinery, whatever it might be, and that's it.
Yeah.
I'm happy.
And I think when you talk about assets too, I know people sometimes don't sell their entire business, but they might sell their domain name, their advertising, their website, their customer database. So they may still sell something, but may not the entire going concern, do they?
That's right, exactly. They might just sell, bits and pieces of it. Pardon me, and a lot of people don't realise that they have value in those intangible assets. They don't realise that there's value sitting there.
Yeah.
You just mentioned database. I can't tell you the number of times that I've been speaking with business owners and they don't realise the value that they have lying in their database. They just think, oh, it's just a list. And conversely, there are so many people who don't collect that sort of information as well, which means that they're really leaving money out there on the pavement. By not collecting the information and adding value, creating value in their businesses.
Yeah. So we've got buyout, we've got, and that could be selling it or a management buyout. We've got liquidation of assets. What else can I do to exit my business?
You could pass it on, to family. I mean, you might just decide that you're just going to, you've just got a succession plan in place, and you're just going to pass it on to, a successor in your family or, whoever that may be.
So you could pass it on to anybody, really, couldn't you? So you don't necessarily have to sell it. You could just say, I'll give it to you, and I suppose you could even retain a small shareholding and get a dividend every quarter or something.
Absolutely,
yeah.
You can.
Yep.
My word. And obviously, depending on the size of the business too, there are it could be that you could sell it off to a private equity partner. They're out there looking for businesses.
What about an IPO? Is that something that people would do, or is it more difficult? Or?
Oh, it's possible. Look, it's very much more difficult, and you really would want to be somewhere up around the 100 million. To be even considering that sort of. You wouldn't want to be. Maybe even, I suppose 50. You could consider it. It takes a. It's a very rigorous and costly process, but of course, it's a way of getting a huge multiplier, for your business.
Yeah.
So if you're up around that level, it's worthy of consideration to go down the IPO.
Floating the business or going public, whatever term you want to use, putting it on the stock exchange.
Yep.
Now, what are some of the tips and traps for people you've got? Because there's people listening to this podcast now going, you know what, I need to do this. I've got a business. I don't have an exit strategy. So when do they need to start thinking about it?
They need to start thinking about it straight away, regardless of whether they think they want to sell the business or not. It's a time. If you give yourself enough time, then you're going to be able to maximise the value of the business, and that's what it's all about. And be ready when someone might just come along out of the blue, and you're ready. In fact, that's what happened to us twice. When I sold my freight business, the people from overseas came along and wanted to buy the business. We were ready. It was great. I mean, we were ready. Even that we'd actually had a couple of offers prior to that, and we weren't ready to sell. But by the time when this international group who bought the business came, we were totally ready. And the same thing happened with another business that we had, which was a real estate business. It was just one of those things that was 11 years in, and someone came along and said, I'd like to buy you out. We were ready. It was fantastic. So giving yourself enough time, making sure that you can put in place all the systems and the procedures and contracts and dotting I's and crossing T's, thinking about what you're going to do for the future. It's really time, giving yourself time. And if you can give at least 3 to 5 years, that's ideal, absolutely ideal. Even if you're not even thinking about it, the best time to think about an exit strategy is when you get into the business.
Yeah.
But given that most people are actually past that, I suspect those who will be listening to this would be past that, start now, and then you've got time. And whether it actually occurs in 2, 3, 5, 10, 20 years, at least you're ready. That's the most important thing.
Yeah. Now, is this something an accountant would help with, or do they need a specialist like yourself, or how does someone go about getting their exit strategy sorted if they decide, right now, I'm going to get this done? Something they can do on their own, or yeah.
As much as I love my accountant, they're not your best exit strategist. They are very much an important part of the team, but no, they don't really know. They'll look at things historically, obviously, and they'll certainly help you get all the all the necessary accounting records together and everything that you need as far as that goes. But an exit strategy is more complex. You really have to start by thinking about who is going to be impacted in terms of an exit. Who is it? Is it apart from yourself? And aligning all your goals, personal goals, the family goals, because your family's going to be impacted when you exit the business. And I'm not just talking financially. It's like, I married you for better or worse, but not for lunch,
I know my mum and dad have retired now. That's mum's biggest complaint. Can we give something for dad to keep him busy?
Yes, exactly.
Get him out of my hair. Yeah.
Yes. So thinking about what it is that you're going to actually do after you exit your business is just as important.
Yeah.
And aligning those, your financial goals, your personal goals, your family, any other stakeholders, employees and things like that who are going to be impacted. So that's really quite an intricate process to actually go through. And addressing those requires really more like a team of people. Your business coach is a great person to help you with some of those issues, but certainly someone like me, that specialises in it now, thinking about it is going to be really, really helpful as well.
Yeah, I mean,
not just, and your accountant, as I said, is very much an important part of the team, but not in isolation.
Yeah, I mean, we're not exit strategists, just the same as we're not accountants. And I always, I know accountants sometimes, it can be hard for them because they are very much an integral part of it. Even when we're coaching a business, an accountant's very, very important to have on board as well. Same with exiting a business because, you need to have the stats. You need to have the numbers right.
You do, absolutely right. And this is why I say giving yourself enough time because, private business owners are notorious for, how shall I say this, looking at ways
being
to
hopeless with their numbers.
Yes, exactly.
I'm trying to translate it there. Oh, okay, looking at ways to enhance their income. I like that. That's very...
Yes. Yes. And so it's really important for them to be able to have enough time to get the house in order.
Yeah.
And, obviously your accountant is someone who's going to really help you with the financial structuring, making sure that you're minimising your taxation exposure, making sure that you do have the right entities in place. And, another thing that's really important too is to consider when you do get out of your business and you get a payout, how that's going to be looked after. Because wealth management in the future is different to when you're in your accumulation phase as to when you're in your utilisation phase. And it can be something that's actually quite difficult to come to grips with. All of a sudden, you're no longer earning money, all of a sudden.
And the other thing I think people underestimate is things like capital gains tax as well.
Absolutely.
And the fact that when you do stop having to go and run your business every day, you end up spending more money on life.
You do.
Yeah, so there's a lot of considerations, isn't there?
There are an awful lot of considerations.
Yeah. So, sorry, I know we're getting close to running out of time. I have got a couple more questions for you. What if there was any question that I haven't asked you, Kerry, that I should have asked you that the listeners need to know about exit strategies? What is it?
Mainly think about as well your contingency plans. It's what I call the dastardly Ds. And if you haven't already put something in place to address some of those, if not all, things like, death, divorce.
They're dastardly. Death, divorce.
Yes, some other disasters that, may happen in terms of, fires, disease, I'm really talking about very pragmatic things that that could come along. And we've had it in our own situation too. You know, my husband actually was diagnosed with bowel cancer back in 2010. And, you know, so he was off work for a year. And so luckily we had all the right insurances and everything in place. We'd actually sold the business at that time, but he was still working there. He stayed on because he wanted to, because he wanted something to do. But you know, the only person that walked through the door with a check was the insurance broker. Everyone else came in with bills. So
yes,
I'm just saying to think about the contingency plans. If you don't have any of those things in place already, really give it some serious thought and make sure you start taking some steps towards those thinking about those sorts of things.
Yeah, because we've been talking about exiting under your own will, but those dastardly Ds are about exiting unexpectedly, aren't they?
They are, absolutely unexpectedly, correct. And you know, in my all of my experience, I've unfortunately had about 3 or 4 of those come into play, and you know, things that you just don't even realise are going to happen. With my freight business, we were about 3 years in, and one of our directors was suddenly diagnosed with liver cancer, and he died within 3 months. I didn't know at the time that the bank froze all our accounts because he was a signatory on the accounts. So for 24 hours, we could not access any of our money at all. So luckily we had a good relationship with the bank. We were able to overcome it, and within 48 hours we were operating again. But if it had gone on for a week, we'd have been out of business. So, you know, that's really incredible that things like that can happen, and it's just something that we hadn't thought about back then. But now, you know, it's one of those areas that you really need to find out. And so you've got some contingencies in place, that's all. It's scenario planning in another world.
Absolutely. You know? Now, you've got a fantastic book called, I think, The Uncensored Truth About Exit Strategies.
I do.
Yeah,
yes.
The Uncensored Truth. So it must have all the details in there, hopefully.
What I do is address 10 myths that every business owner must know before they create their exit strategy. So, and in fact, Ben, that's actually available free from my website. It's not an ebook, it's a hard copy, and I'm happy to send it to anybody who wants to order it from the website.
So what's the web address for that, Kerry?
Yep. It's the W's, of course, theexitstrategygroup.com.au.
So theexitstrategygroup.com.au. I'll make sure there's the links in the show notes. So it's actioncoachanz.com/BBF for Business Brain Food 063. And I'll make sure I've got links to Kerry's book there. And if people want to get in contact with you, Kerry, are you on social media or LinkedIn or anything like that where they can find you, or just the website's best?
Oh, they'll find me on the website. They'll find me on LinkedIn. They'll find me on Facebook. Yes. So I'm there. If they just look up Kerry Boulton with a U in it, or Boulton Holdsworth, they'll even find it is appearing in some places. That's my married name is Holdsworth, but it's got the Boulton at the beginning of it. But through the website, you'll find me very easily.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, thanks so much for joining us on the Business Brain Food podcast today. I think you would have enlightened a lot of people as to the not just the importance, but some of the ways that they can think about how they're going to exit the business. But I think the last point that we touched on there was that sometimes it can be a forced exit, and I think you really need to be ready for that, don't you?
Absolutely, you do. Just think about contingencies and put some plans in place so that you're not caught out.
All right. All we've got left to do now is the 60-second scramble. Are you ready for that?
I'm ready. All
right. I'm going to start the clock. Here we go. All right, what's your best way to tune out and relax?
Oh, meditation.
Meditation, very good. Do you have a hidden talent?
I'm a cupboard singer.
A cupboard singer. Does that mean that you can't sing, but you like singing? Or?
Oh, I love singing. I'm good for the chorus, but that's about it.
I'm good at singing when I'm drunk, but I'm the only one that thinks I'm good. What's the strangest thing that you've ever eaten?
Octopus. I don't like it.
Oh, really?
Yes.
What's your biggest addiction?
Oh, this is going to sound so boring. I love learning. I'm addicted to learning.
Nothing wrong with that. I see plenty of them keep coming to my webinars and seminars, and they love the learning, and I think it's a good thing. My mantra is learn more. If you want to earn more, learn more. That's what I say.
Very good.
Yeah. And on that note, have you got a favourite inspirational quote you can share with the listeners?
Whatever you vividly imagine, ardently desire, sincerely believe and enthusiastically act upon will inevitably come to pass.
Love it. Well, once again, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. It's been a pleasure having you on. I really love talking to you, and good luck with everything in the future.
Thanks, Ben. Really appreciate it too.